Kale Marrow moved quietly through the halls of the Elven library, his footsteps soft on the smooth marble floor. The walls around him glowed faintly with silver light, alive with elven magic. High above, enchanted lanterns floated like stars. Everything here was perfect, cold, and far beyond what any human was allowed to touch. He kept his eyes low as he passed a pair of elven guards. Their pale, sharp faces looked down on him with the usual disgust. To them, he was just another servant, a human scribe who copied texts too simple or too dirty for elven hands. But Kale was more than that. Much more. In secret, he read everything. Old scrolls, banned books, even forgotten languages carved into the stone shelves. He remembered it all. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Tonight, he had found something strange. Inside a book older than most elves, he found a name. Embercore. The ink was faded, nearly lost in time, but the words stood out like fire in the snow. There was no explanation, only a few lines. When the fire dies, it waits below. In ashen silence, it waits for the mind to rise. Kale's heart beat faster. He didn't know what Embercore was, but something in him stirred. A memory, maybe, or a whisper from a time long before the elves came. He closed the book and tucked a scrap of parchment into his robe. Then he turned to leave. But a voice stopped him. "You don't belong here, human." Kale froze. An elven scholar stood in the archway, her silver robes shining in the magic light. Her eyes were narrow, cruel. She looked like someone who would enjoy turning him in. "I was told to copy this volume for the third archive." Kale lied, bowing low. She stepped forward, frowning. "That book belongs in the sealed vault. How did you open it?" Kale's mind raced. He had picked the lock using a tiny tool hidden in his boot. If he got caught now, he would be thrown into the pits, or worse. "Hi. I found it open," he said quickly. "Someone else must have." The elf raised her hand, glowing with blue energy. "Lies. You touched forbidden knowledge." Kale didn't wait. He threw the book at her face and ran. He sprinted through the halls, pushing past startled scholars and ducking under glowing vines. Alarms rang behind him, sharp, cold bells made from light. He raced to the servants' exit, slipped through the door, and vanished into the night. Outside, the elven city shimmered in the dark like glass under moonlight. Trees taller than towers whispered with magic, but Kale didn't stop to admire them. He had a name. He had a clue. And he had a reason to fight. Kale ran until his legs felt like fire. His lungs burned, and every breath tasted like smoke and fear. Behind him, the white towers of Thalariel glowed in the night, shining like stars fallen to earth. But Kale wasn't looking back. He couldn't. Not now. He had broken the one law no human dared to break. He had read the secrets of the elves. The forest at the edge of the city was dark and thick. Branches clawed at his arms as he pushed deeper into the trees. The sound of magic still echoed in the air, a soft hum that made the hairs on his neck rise. Finally, when his legs gave out, Kale collapsed near a stream. Cold water rushed over stones beside him. He let himself fall flat on the ground, chest rising and falling, listening. Silence. Then a whisper. "You made quite a mess, little scribe." Kale jumped to his feet. A tall figure stood across the stream, leaning on a twisted wooden staff. A long cloak covered his body, but Kale could see pale elven skin under the hood, and only one eye. The other socket was covered by a rough patch of leather. Kale stepped back. "You're an elf." The man gave a crooked smile. "Was. Long ago. But they don't like me anymore." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" "My name doesn't matter. What matters is the name you found, Embercore." Kale froze. "How do you know that?" The one-eyed elf laughed softly. "Because I was there when it was hidden. Before your kind fell. Before the elves broke the world and bent it to their will." Kale's voice shook. "It's real." "Yes, and now you've painted a target on your back." He stepped across the water with ease, standing before Kale. "You need help. I can give it, for a price." Kale didn't trust him. He couldn't. But the name Embercore burned in his chest like a second heartbeat. If this elf had even a piece of the truth. What do you want? Freedom, the old elf said. Revenge, and maybe to see the world burn bright again before it turns cold forever. Kale nodded slowly. Then help me find it. The elf held out his hand. We start now. There's a place north of here, deep in the woods. The Blood Grove. No elf dares to enter it. Why? Because that's where the last humans stood before they fell. And the Embercore, if it still exists, might be buried in the bones of that war. Kale took the elf's hand. The journey had begun. The trees grew darker as Kale and the one-eyed elf Syrian stepped into the Blood Grove. The sun disappeared behind thick black leaves, and even the air felt heavy. Every branch twisted like a claw. Every root seemed to reach out as if trying to pull them under the earth. This place feels wrong, Kale said, his voice low. It remembers, Syrian replied. 1,000 humans died here, fighting their last war. Their pain still lingers. Kale looked around. Strange shapes were carved into the bark, symbols of old human clans long forgotten. Bones lay scattered beneath the leaves, white and silent. The forest was a graveyard. After hours of walking, they reached a clearing. In the center stood a camp made of old metal, stone, and tents sewn from beast hide. Fires burned low in pits, and shadows moved between wooden watchtowers. Syrian raised his hand. Stay calm. These are the ones who survived. Before Kale could ask more, a group of rough-looking humans stepped from behind the trees. They wore armor made from scrap and carried weapons crafted from broken tools. One of them raised a crossbow and aimed it at Kale's chest. Then she stepped forward. A tall woman with short dark hair and a lone scar across her face. Her eyes were hard, sharp as steel. I don't know you, she said to Kale. And I don't trust elves. Kale held up his hands. I'm not your enemy. Then why bring him? She growled, nodding toward Syrian. He's not like the others, Kale said quickly. He wants to fight them, like you do. The woman's eyes didn't leave his face. Who are you? Kale narrow. I escaped Thalariel with a secret. I think I know how to find the Embercore. The crowd behind her murmured. Some stepped closer. Even the woman seemed shaken by the word. You shouldn't even know that name, she said coldly. Kale pulled out the parchment he had stolen, the old lines about the Embercore. The woman took it, studied it, then looked back at him. I'm Commander Rika Thorn, leader of this resistance. She paused. If this is a trick, you'll die slow. Kale met her stare. If I'm right, we might all live free. Rika nodded. Then prove it. An elven patrol has been hunting us for weeks. Take them down using that clever head of yours. Then maybe I'll listen. Kale looked at Syrian, who gave a slow nod. We'll do it. That night, Kale worked quickly, setting traps, drawing maps, using broken elven runes to confuse the enemy's magic compasses. At dawn, the patrol walked straight into the trap. The ground exploded beneath them. Smoke and fire filled the air. When it cleared, only human banners stood. Rika watched Kale with new eyes. Maybe you're more dangerous than you look. Kale smiled for the first time in days. The ruins of old Vasenthal lay before them like a broken crown. Crumbled walls reached toward the gray sky, tangled with vines and moss. The wind whispered through empty windows, carrying secrets long forgotten. This was where the Embercore was said to sleep, deep beneath the earth. Kale stood at the edge of the ruins, his heart pounding. Around him, Rika and her fighters readied their weapons, their faces hard with hope and fear. No magic, Kale warned. If the elves sense a single spark, they'll come running. Rika nodded. Then we use our minds and steel. They moved carefully through the shattered streets. The ground was uneven, littered with broken stone and rusted metal. Shadows shifted behind cracked pillars. The air smelled old of dust and lost battles. Kale led them to a tall tower half fallen. Inside, a staircase twisted downward, disappearing into darkness. This must be the way in, he said. With only the faint glow of a lantern, Kale climbed down first. The air grew colder, heavier. The walls were carved with ancient symbols, some human, some elven. Kale traced them with his fingers, feeling a pulse beneath the stone. Suddenly, the floor beneath him shifted. He jumped back just in time as a trap snapped shut, slicing through the air where his foot had been moments before. "Careful," he whispered. They moved deeper, step by step. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber, its walls covered in glowing runes. In the center stood a large crystal, dull and lifeless. Kale's breath caught. "Is this the Ember Core?" Rika asked. He shook his head. "No, this is the lock." Around the crystal, strange mechanisms clicked and hummed faintly. Kale knelt and studied them, working quickly to understand the puzzle. Hours passed, the only sound the soft tapping of his tools and the steady breaths of the others. Finally, with a soft click, the crystal flared to life. Flames danced inside, warm and alive. It was not firelight from a torch, but a glowing pure flame that seemed to burn without smoke. Kale reached out and touched it. Power surged through him, clear, sharp like lightning in his veins. Suddenly, alarms blared far above. Elven sentries had sensed the disturbance. "Time to go," Rekka shouted. Kale grabbed the Ember Core, and they fled the chamber. The ruins shook as elven magic struck the stones around them. Outside, the sky darkened with elven warships, their silver sails glowing with power. Rika drew her sword, eyes blazing. "We fight for every step." Kale gripped the Ember Core tightly. This was just the beginning. If they could use its power, humans might finally stand against the elves. The sky above the rebel camp burned red and gold as the sun dipped low. Kale stood on a small hill, holding the Ember Core carefully in his hands. Around him, men and women worked quickly, repairing walls, sharpening weapons, and whispering hopes. The elven warships were coming. They floated like silver ghosts across the horizon, their sails glowing with magic. From those ships, the elves would send their best mage knights, powerful warriors who could call lightning and wine with a wave of their hands. Kale turned to Rika. "We can't fight them with swords and arrows. They'll crush us." Rika smiled grimly. "Then we fight smarter." Kale nodded. He had spent nights studying the Ember Core's power. It didn't work like elven magic. It was something different, something human. It grew stronger when people used their minds, their courage, and their will. Using scraps of old metal and wood, Kale and Syrian built strange machines. They were slow and clumsy, but they could fire heavy stones, set traps, and confuse the enemy's magic. As the elven ships drew closer, the rebel camp grew tense. Children were hidden in caves. Scouts ran messages between watchtowers. Kale checked the Ember Core one last time. The flame inside pulsed gently, as if waiting. The first elven soldiers landed in the clearing. Their armor gleamed and their eyes shone with cold light. They moved like shadows, silent and deadly. But the humans were ready. At Kale's signal, the machines roared to life. Heavy stones flew through the air, smashing into elven shields. Smoke bombs exploded, hiding the rebels' movements. Rika led the fighters in a fierce charge, their battle cries echoing. Kale stayed behind the lines, focusing on the Ember Core. He could feel its power growing. With every act of bravery and every clever trick, the flame inside brightened. Suddenly, a group of mage knights appeared, their hands crackling with magic. They aimed to destroy the machines and kill the rebels. Kale acted fast. He touched the Ember Core to a strange metal device. A burst of bright light shot into the sky, cutting through the elven magic like a sword. The mage knights staggered, their spells failing. The humans pushed forward. Rika's voice rang out, "Hold the line. We fight for our freedom." The battle raged for hours. Dust rose, weapons clashed, and the air filled with shouts and pain. But slowly, the humans won. When the last elven soldier fled, the camp erupted in cheers. Kale looked at the Ember Core. The flame burned steady now, a bright beacon in the night. "We did it," he said. Rika smiled, tired but proud. "You did it. Your mind and this strange flame gave us a chance." Kale knew the fight was far from over, but for the first time, hope was real. The morning after the battle, the camp was quiet but tense. Kale sat near the ember core, the strange flame flickering softly in his hands. Around him, the rebels cleaned their weapons and tended to the wounded. Some laughed softly, but many stared into the distance, thinking about what was next. Syrian approached, his one eye sharp and thoughtful. "The elves will not forget this defeat." Kale nodded. "They'll send more, stronger, faster. They always do." Syrian looked at the glowing flame. "But you have something they fear more than magic, their own mistakes." Kale frowned. "What do you mean?" Syrian sat down beside him. "Long ago, the elves ruled the world with power and pride. But they were blind to their own flaws. They thought their magic made them gods. They enslaved humans, crushed our rebellions, and hid their secrets in places like Old Vasimful." Kale listened carefully. "But humans are different," Syrian said quietly. "You have strength in your spirit, in your will to survive and fight. That is why this ember core is dangerous. It is not just magic, it is hope." Kale looked into the flame. "Hope can be a weapon." "It is the greatest weapon, and the greatest danger." Rika walked over, her face serious. "We need to move fast. The Elven High Council will send assassins and spies. They want to break us before we grow strong." Kale stood. "Then we strike first." Rika's eyes widened. "How?" "We don't have their power." "We don't need it," Kale said. "We have cunning and the Ember Core. We'll use their own pride against them." That night, Kale and Syrian led a small group deep into Elven territory. The forests were silent, watchful. Every shadow could hide a blade. But Kale's mind was sharp, and the Ember Core gave him courage. They reached a high tower where the Elven leaders met. It was surrounded by powerful wards and guards, but Kale's traps and Syrian's knowledge opened the way. Inside, the council was gathered. Pale faces turned toward the sound of breaking stone and shouts. Kale stepped forward, holding the Ember Core high. "You called humans weak," he said loudly, "but we have the fire you cannot burn." The council members snarled and raised their magic, but the Ember Core flared bright, blocking their spells. The humans moved like shadows, striking with surprise and skill. In minutes, the tower was silent. Kale looked at the fallen leaders and spoke. "Your rule is over. We will no longer bow." The message was clear. The news spread like wildfire. The Elven High Council's tower had fallen and their leaders were no more. Across the land, whispers of rebellion grew louder. Humans, long hidden and broken, now stood tall with hope blazing in their eyes. Kale stood at the front of the rebel camp, the Ember Core burning brightly in his hands. Around him, thousands of humans prepared for the final battle. They wore scars, dirt, and determination. They were ready. Rika approached, her face fierce and proud. "The elves will come with everything they have. This fight will decide the future." Kale nodded. "We have one advantage. They expect us to be weak. They don't know we've learned their secrets." Syrian, standing beside them, added, "Or that humans can be more dangerous than any magic." The ground shook as elven armies marched toward them, shining like waves of silver and green. The air crackled with magic, and the sky darkened with thunder. Kale raised the Ember Core. "Hold your ground. Remember who we are." The battle began with a roar. Elven arrows flew like lightning, but the humans used quick traps and clever moves to avoid them. Spears clashed with swords. Magic met fire and grit. Kale stayed close to the Ember Core, feeling its power grow with every brave heart around him. It was not just a flame. It was the spirit of every human who had ever been ignored or crushed. Suddenly, a group of elven mage knights charged toward Kale's position. Their magic glowed fierce, trying to snatch the Ember Core. Kale's breath caught, but before the mage knights could reach him, Rika and her warriors blocked the way. Steel met magic in a shower of sparks. Kale used the Ember Core to send out a pulse of light that confused the elves, breaking their spells. "We fight as one," Kale shouted. The humans pushed forward, surprising the elven soldiers with bold attacks and sharp minds. Each step forward was a victory. But the battle was far from easy. The elves brought forth giant beasts and enchanted weapons. The earth shook with their power. Kale looked to the sky, seeing an elven warship descending, its magic ready to strike the rebel camp. He gritted his teeth. "Now, Syrian?" The old elf raised his staff, calling upon ancient forces long forgotten. With Kale's help, they combined the Ember Core's flame with Syrian's magic to create a barrier of fire that surrounded the camp. The warship's magic crashed against the flame but could not break through. The elven soldiers faltered. The tide had turned. When the sun rose, the battlefield was quiet. The humans stood victorious, their faces shining with sweat and hope. Kale looked at the Ember Core, now glowing with a soft warmth. "This is our future." Rika smiled. One human was all it took. The battlefield was quiet now. The smoke from the last fight drifted slowly into the clear morning sky. Humans stood among the fallen elves, breathing hard, but victorious. The war that seemed impossible was over. Kale looked down at the Ember Core in his hands. The flame inside burned bright and steady, like a heart beating strong. Around him, the faces of his people showed something new: hope. Rika stepped forward, her sword resting at her side. "We did it. We're free." Kale smiled, but inside he felt the weight of what had happened. Freedom was not just winning a fight. It was a chance to build something new, something better. Syrian appeared beside them, his one eye shining with pride. "Your courage changed everything. The elves never believed humans could rise like this." Kale shook his head. "We didn't just rise. We fought smart. We used our minds in this." He lifted the Ember Core. This was more than magic. It was the fire inside every human. Rika looked out over the crowd. The elves ruled for centuries, but they forgot one thing: humans don't give up. We keep fighting. We keep dreaming. The humans cheered, voices rising like a wave. Children ran through the camp, laughing for the first time in a long while. Old warriors sat down, exhausted but smiling. Kale thought about the future. The elven cities would no longer hold humans as slaves. The forests and lands would be shared. Maybe one day, humans and elves could even be allies, not enemies. But that day was far away. For now, the humans had to rebuild. "We must protect the Ember Core," Kale said. "It's a symbol and a power. If we guard it well, it will guide us." Rika nodded. "And we'll train every person to be ready." This war showed that strength comes from more than just swords and spells. Syrian smiled softly. "Perhaps the greatest magic is the will to change." As the sun climbed higher, the people began clearing the battlefield. They buried their dead with honor, both human and elven. The war was a heavy price, but a necessary one. Kale looked once more at the Ember Core's flame. It was steady and bright, a promise of what could come. "Today," he said, "one human was all it took. But tomorrow, it will take all of us." And with that, the first steps of a new era began, an age where humans were no longer shadows beneath elven light, but a rising flame that would never be put out.